Serving it up to you live on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. I'm Bruce Nolan. Someone please tell me where Nate Geary is, and this is Food for Thought, a show combining two of your three favorite F words, food and football. The third one is foiled. I have been foiled again, but I'm not entirely alone this evening. I'm just mostly alone. It's like sort of being single, but not really being single. It's somewhere in the middle of being single because Mr. Geary is joining me, but he's not joining me in the same method by which he normally joins me. And not only is he screwing up the whole guest thing, he's also screwing up the timing of the guest thing. So apparently we're just all going to operate on Nate's schedule, just the world just revolving around Nate at Epcot. And you know what? After all the stuff that you have said, Mr. Geary, about fish fry over the last couple of days, let me just tell you, you're going to get yourself an opportunity to explain yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, starting off the episode with the guest spot, but also making my co-host the guest, here's Nate Geary. What's going on?
What do I have to defend? Being just generally right about things?
I guess it must be that. I didn't even know. I came in like halfway through this whole fish fry and Nate thing. I'll level with you. It's been years since I've had a fish fry, but I don't remember it being drastically terrible. I don't remember it being something that needed to be crusaded against. Nate.
Sure. Well, listen, I had never tried it until yesterday at Epcot. Which a lot of people are trying to convince me that eating it in Buffalo would be so dramatically different than eating it at Epcot. Somehow there are special ingredients in a beer battered fried fish in Buffalo than it is here in Epcot or in Disney or in Florida. And listen, I get that about chicken wings, but fish fry is not universal to Buffalo. It is not solely a Buffalo staple. Now, I know people in Buffalo will say it's the best in Buffalo, and there's lots of good places to get it. It is tasteless white fish battered in a kind of gross, hard, the smell of it, Bruce, and we've talked about this on the show. If it doesn't pass the smell test, it can taste amazing. And it's going to be hard for me. The texture and the smell are the two things that I have the most difficult time getting over. And working in McDonald's, now I know, listen, I'm not judging fried fish on the filet of fish sandwiches from McDonald's because I understand that it is a very different thing. But working in a McDonald's kitchen for 2.5 years, there is something very repulsive, Bruce, about the oil that gets cooked and used. And you're at the place that's serving fried fish in Buffalo on Friday nights. They're busting out 200 fried fishes a night in those fryers. And I don't know, man. It just is. It's not a good smell to me. That is the one thing about fish that I have a tough time with is if it smells or if it has that overly fishy smell to it, I'm just not going to be able to get myself to eat it because it's not a good thing for me. I don't enjoy it. And if I'm not going to enjoy it, why am I going to eat it?
So when it comes to fishing, you smell, you like more of the mahi-mahi, the orange roughy, things that's not quite as fishy of fish.
Yes. The one white fish that I actually do very much like is Chilean sea bass. But that is really kind of best, you wouldn't deep fry that, and I think there's certain things, I think as Americans, we have deep frying, Bruce, to me, I think is an overrated technique of cooking food. Because deep frying to me, especially if you're deep frying in oil or, you're in peanut oil or whatever the standard oil is, it's going to take the flavor profile away a little bit. You're going to get that, whatever the flavor of the oil that you're using is, plus whatever else has been cooked in it. I genuinely, I love fried chicken, don't get me wrong. But I think there are so many great ways to cook chicken that I don't need to always have fried chicken. I just think deep frying things, the love affair of Americans, deep frying everything, Oreos, Twinkies, you name it. Like a Twinkie and Oreo, they are perfect the way they are. They don't need to be deep fried to me. Like, not everything needs to be deep fried, people.
We'll tell you one thing that does need to be deep fried, and that is chicken wings. Chicken wings
Yes,
need to be
that's a
fried.
fact.
And
That's a
you
fact.
recently had an adventure
I did.
with chicken
I
wings.
did.
And for those of you who are not familiar, Mr. Geary had an opportunity to escort
Good
famous
word.
world-renowned chef Alton Brown around Buffalo to attempt to change his mind on chicken wings, because he was not known as being an overly fond member of the chicken wing, aficionados, but tasked with this monumental responsibility, this huge responsibility. The weight of the chicken wing was on Nate's shoulders. He had to deliver. It was the fourth quarter, down by 5, 30 seconds, no timeouts. And Nate delivered. And Alton Brown posted on his social media account that his mind had been changed and that the best chicken wings actually came from Buffalo. So,
It felt
Nate,
nice.
why don't you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Well, there's a lot to tell, Bruce. Obviously, the whole conversation started because I was having a conversation about who we should get, what Food Network star, Bruce, that we should have to promote food for thought. And Alton's name came up. He and I started chatting about chicken wings. You know what he said, Bruce? He said, "A breaded chicken wing will never touch these lips," is what he said. So when he said that, I knew I was talking to somebody who understood the sort of the gravity of the wing situation in Buffalo. Is, for the most part, I know people here in Buffalo are all giddy about wing nuts. I have not had wing nuts yet. That's the one that was featured on, I think, Barstool.
I feel like
And
we
I have
should
not.
go to Wingnuts, you and me, at some
Yeah,
point.
because if I've never had it, I think that makes sense. I think we probably should do it because that means you've also never had it, and I think
Mhm.
I'd be willing to try it.
Sure, why not?
I don't believe breading chicken wings is sacrilegious. Like, and I know he's not like beer battering them. He's kind of lightly coating them to give them the extra crunch, which I actually admire, because here was the thing, and here's what helped me steer Alton into the restaurants that I believed were going to change his mind. Because he, first and foremost, he would not tell me, and I kind of knew the restaurants in the previous places he had tried wings before and didn't have a good experience back in 2019. This all stems from him tweeting out back in 2019, "If you want good wings, you don't get them in Buffalo." And that was after he went to a couple of more mainstream bars, or should I say, wing joints here in Buffalo. I'm not here because I'm in Florida, but you get the picture. He said to me, Bruce, "Sauce is the masking agent of the poor and the chefless." It was, as you could, I tried to say it like Alton, but I
That was a really
essentially
good
was.
Alton vernacular, by the way.
Thank you. So I'd gotten the sense that wing sauce was not something that was going to either make or break for him, right? But it was secondary to like the cook on the wing itself. So when he told me it was all about the texture and the crispiness in the cook on the wing, that crossed off like 7 places on my list, right? Like, you don't want to go to a place that is over saucy. You don't want to go to a place that takes it right out of the fryer and throws it directly into like a pool of hot sauce, because that is not going to create the type of texture that's going to get him to change his mind. So, obviously Bar-Bill was on my list, and that was the first place we started, and we met up. So we had kind of gone back and forth a couple of days texting, and he said, "Do you want us to pick you up?" He's like, "I have a driver. I could come pick you up." And as much as I wanted to, part of this is I had to actually move my trip back. So I was supposed to leave Monday at noon. Alton mentioned that he could be in Buffalo Monday morning and have lunch. So I looked at my girlfriend and I said, "We have a chance to go hang out with Alton Brown. Are we going to move our flights back?" And like, it was a resounding yes, we're going to move the flights back. So we moved it back to 6:30 so that we could spend 5 hours of our afternoon starting at 11:30. We were the first people into Bar-Bill. By the time we got our chicken wings, the place was pumped. It had a line outside the door. It was awesome. So Alton had a good experience there. Nothing but good things to say about the wings there. But it wasn't until we got to Lenova, Bruce. And I'm not sure if you yourself have had Lenova. Have you?
I have not.
So this was the thing that I know a lot of people were upset about. Nate, how could you bring him to Lenovo. There are so many other great places. And what it goes back to, Bruce, is first of all, I did not pick Lenovo. I want to go out, although it ended up being his favorite. I did not myself pick Lenovo. Buffalo Food on the Buffalo News, Andrew Galerno, which I believe is how you say his last name. I apologize if I mispronounced his last name. He came along with us. He chose Lenovo and Duff's. And Duff's on Sheridan is his favorite chicken wing place. Now, he took Alton after we left Elmo's to go to Duff's, and Alton did not change his mind on Duff's wings. He did not like the Duff's wings. And Bruce, I don't know if you've ever been to Duff's, but they are pulled from the fryer, tossed into a pool of hot sauce and butter. And that is not conducive to creating that crispy wing when it gets to the table, right? Instead, it creates that steam effect because you're throwing that hot wing right into the liquids, and it's creating that moistness right away. So I kind of knew that Alton was not going to like Duff's. I'm thinking to myself, the last two places for us was Lenovo and Elmo's. I need a place where we're going to get a pit, a char grill on top of the deep fry, something I know is going to create almost like that jerky effect, right? The caramelization of the sauce. So he did like the Lenovo barbecue, and Lenovo barbecue is like basically candied wings. But it was the medium wing to him that was the best, that sort of stole the show for him. And I know that's going to make a lot of people angry because it's a pizzeria. I myself prefer Macy's wings over Lenovo, but I was overruled. And I'm sorry, Nick's my buddy at Macy's. I can't pick Macy's over Elmo's and Barbill. So those are my two. I stuck with it. And listen, Alton was a super cool guy. Was for a guy that had come in kind of with a bias, right? I mean, he said he didn't like buffalo wings. He was very open-minded. He tried all the wings. We ate a lot of food, and we had a great time. And then afterwards, he also mentioned he is now in a physical relationship with Beef on Weck. Is one of the things he left saying.
Okay, well,
sexual relationship.
This is a PG rated show, so we don't really talk about that.
It is. People always ask if they can swear on podcasts, and I'm always like, yeah, sure. And then Bruce is like, God blessed man, I gotta go in and beat this out now. Son of a Nate.
Seriously, son of a motherless goat. That's what we say here on the show. Yes, that's how we do this. So Nate, I know that you can't be here for long. I know you wanted to make sure you jumped in and do the spot ahead of time, but I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the foods. I want to get your thoughts on the food simile for today, because you and I were chatting about it online, and the food simile for today is the Poyer rumblings and the agent change make me feel like. So I'm going to go first,
sure,
so that I can buy you some time, and then this can be where you make your mark on the discussion, and you can go off and do your Epcot thing the way you're supposed to be doing it. But for me, the Poyer agent change and the rumblings make me feel like I am stuck in the middle of an argument between people who prefer thin crust and people who prefer thick crust pizza. My mother is someone who prefers thin crust pizza. She always refers to it as cracker crust. She's like, "Oh, I want a crust like a cracker, right? She wants a crust like a cracker." That's what she always says. And there are certain other members in my nuclear family who really prefer thick, deep dish pan pizza. And I'm sitting here in the middle going, we all know the superior crust is Detroit style. We all know
absolutely,
this.
Bruce. Absolutely.
But I don't think it's even debatable at this point, right? But
no,
I'm listening to these two sides argue, and I go, well, now hold on here. You're too thick and you're too thin, but this is just right. And it feels like a very strange sort of conversation. It's either, you know what? Screw it. Let him walk. Or, no, give him whatever he wants. And I'm like, well, there's a nuance here that comes along with the idea that you can't keep everyone. So the money's come from somewhere. Now, I pitched on social media that we already have $12 million, allotted for Tremaine Edmonds. It's already there. It's fully guaranteed this year. So literally, you could just take that money and just give it to Poyer over the next 2 years, and I'd be good with that. I'd be fine with that, right? He's for 2022, 2023. He leaves in 2024, right? We get 2 more years of Poyer at perfectly reasonable without any consternation about his contract, right? We get an asset back for Tremaine Edmonds, and we call it a day, right? I'm fine with that. But then you always feel like you're getting yelled at by either side. The people who prefer
Yeah.
thin crust are like, no, what are you idiots? You can't have that. How are you supposed to eat so many pieces if you got thick crust? And the people who like thick crust are looking at you and, what is this? Baby pizza? What are you talking about? This is pizza for ants? What kind of pizza is this? It's like Zoolander all over again. And so that's what this conversation makes me feel like. Now, I know, Nate, I know you have a different take on this because you and I had a chance to chat, but I'd love to hear you try and throw that into a food simile for me.
Yeah, so this is sort of like going to the steakhouse, the aged New York City Gallagher Steakhouse, right? And it's your job to choose between which aged cut of beef you're going to eat tonight. And unfortunately, Bruce, you only have brought enough money to buy one piece of meat. Otherwise, you might buy a piece of meat and then buy another cooked one to bring it back so you can join in the hotel room after dinner. But you know what, Bruce? You're on a budget. You're in New York City. You're doing things. You're on a trip. You're enjoying your time. You don't have the budget to buy the bone-in filet and the cowboy ribeye. You just don't have that choice. But the great thing is, Bruce, you're in New York City. You're in Gallagher Steakhouse, famous aged beef extraordinaire, right? And just like the Bills, this is part of the decision-making process when you're in an elite level place with elite level offerings. These are the sorts of decisions that good teams are often forced to make that the Bills in years past simply have not been able to make. It's like living in Buffalo looking for a really good aged steak. You're really not going to find it. There's not a lot of good places to go find an aged beef. But in New York City, in Las Vegas, you go to these bigger metros, these bigger cities, you're going to be able to find. And it's just like when the Bills have evolved from being a small market team that hadn't been able to make the playoffs in 17 years to a team with an elite level quarterback, a number one level wide receiver, a tight end who's 24 years old, who's sort of like the bone-in filet, right? And you look at some of the other pieces on this team, on this offense, and I keep thinking to myself, Bruce, I know that you can do it, but it doesn't mean you should. And I think the Bills, and I think Brandon Beane has probably spoiled us, Bruce, to the point where now everybody believes there's enough money for everyone. And although he has been able to, in a very wizardly-like way, find ways to make it work, to find room under the cap, to go and get Roger Saffold, to go and sign Von Miller to a quote-unquote 6-year, $120 million contract. Surely there's room to sign Jordan Poyer. But if you pay Poyer, you've also got to pay Hyde, right? I mean, you can't pay one and not the other, Bruce, because if you pay Poyer, then Micah Hyde's going to say, well, I want to make just as much. And you're going to be in the same position, Bruce. So to me, I don't know. I keep coming back to this scenario where I think about letting go of guys a year early instead of a year late. And I guess I agree with you to a certain extent with Poyer that you probably are going to get a similar level of play over the next 2 years. But you just don't know in the NFL, man. And especially with, listen, I love the defensive backfield. It's the rock of this defense. It also is probably the unit that lost them the AFC divisional round game, right? So to me, as long as you have Josh Allen, you can surround him with the weapons necessary and the protection up front on the offensive line. You know, I'm just going to end up picking the bone-in filet, and I'm going to have a good time doing it. I'm going to eat the steak, and I'm going to forget about the fact that I had to choose between 5 unbelievable other cuts of meat that I'm probably only going to try every time I go, and which is like, once every other year when I go to New York City. So it's a difficult process, Bruce. Difficult decisions. And what else, the kind of final thing I'll say about this is Brandon Beane has made difficult decisions look so very easy that this might be the first decision that he can't spin and make look like he just, snaps his fingers and everything's all right again. And he's happy and Micah Hyde's happy. Listen, when you start paying guys their worth, the next guy up stand and say, well, what about me? Who's next? And Bruce, you can't pay everybody. Otherwise, there'd be a salary cap. You'd be the New York Yankees.
Also, there would never be any good players hitting free agency.
Ever.
That's
right.
We talk about Mickey Loomis all the time and his cap manipulation over time. Mickey Loomis and the Saints just lost one of the best left tackles in football to free agency to the Miami Dolphins. Everybody loses somebody. You just have to be strategic about what it is. Nate,
and what
thank you so much for joining me, man. I appreciate
listen,
it.
Bruce, before you kick me off, position and which positions are premier positions, I would agree with you that safety is not as low on the list as maybe other people will say, but most teams don't pay two of them, right? And you are
Yes.
paying both right now, and one's
Yes.
32, the other one's 31. And if you asked me, Bruce, to prioritize who do I want, even with the age older, it would be hard for me to pick Jordan Poyer over Micah Hyde. And I'm not that anyone's
I wouldn't
asking
pick
me to.
Poyer over Hyde. I
Not that
have gone
anyone's
on record as
good.
saying before, I think
Okay.
Hyde's more important.
I think Hyde is also more important. And I don't want to have to choose Poyer or Hyde, but if I had to, I don't think it's particularly close. And I like what Poyer does. I believe he is he's that true strong safety, a guy that can play the box, a guy that can cover tight ends, that can do the rest. He would be missed. But what Micah Hyde does in the center of the field and as a deep third safety, it's not that is a role you cannot lose. And if I have to choose one or the other, and Bruce, you probably do. Again, I think if you pay Poyer, you got to pay Hyde, and I don't think you can pay both.
Well, there you have it, folks.
That was my TED Talk.
There it was. Nate Geary, WGR 550, also, the host of the show, with
this show.
me.
Yes, this show.
Nate, I wanted to make sure that I got you out in a reasonable time. I appreciate you taking a break from your vacation to do it, and I will hold down the fort here and go off and have fun. And don't worry about this. I'll, take care of the rest of it.
Thanks, buddy. I'll chat with you next week. And for the folks out there who are watching or listening afterwards, Alton Brown's tour should be ending in the next couple of weeks, and we can expect him here joining us on a Friday night very soon.
That's right. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Geary, I appreciate it, man.
Later, guys.
All righty. We did it. It's weird to have a guest spot at the beginning of a show, and it's really weird when that guest is actually the person who is supposed to be your co-host. Like that's weird. We can all agree that's weird, right? I feel like that's weird. But we have some pieces of information in the comments that I want to get to. And Padden says Micah Hyde's advanced stats are ridiculous. You're right. And I think that the role that Micah Hyde plays is so unbelievably important. I got a bunch of hate for this take a couple years ago. I was on Pat Moran's show, and I ranked Micah Hyde as the second best player on the team. This was before Josh Allen blew up and before the Bills acquired. So it was years back. And I said Micah Hyde was the best player on the team. And I ranked him above Jordan Poyer, second best player on the team. And they were like, whoa, what? And I said, no. The role that Micah Hyde plays is so important, especially given the fact that teams just do not want to do it. For a long stretch of time, teams just don't want to throw in the deep middle part of the field. For a long stretch of time, the Buffalo Bills had a 0 passer rating when throwing to the deep middle of the field. 0. You would be better off throwing the ball into the ground than throwing it deep middle against the Buffalo Bills. That's how good it was. So that's a Nate Geary special right there. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about Micah Hyde being really important. As long as you have a situation where you have corners like Levi Wallace who need to be protected, right? Or you have corners who are, 4.5, 4.6 guys. I think it's really, really important that you have someone like Micah Hyde. So I am all in. Micah Hyde is probably one of my favorite players on the team. Brent says, I do appreciate Bruce and Nate chemistry. You guys are so great. You know what's weird? Nate and I didn't work together frequently before this, which is kind of strange when you think about it. I was on Sports Talk Saturday a couple times. He was on my show like twice, I think, but it really wasn't something that we built up over years. We've only been doing this show for like 8 months, I think. And as you can tell, we're not always on together. Sometimes he's on and I'm not. Sometimes I'm on and he's not. So it really hasn't happened over time. It's just kind of a natural chemistry. I think there's a good give and take. And I think the important thing there is that Nate and I are different enough to make it interesting, but not different enough to make it constantly in conflict. And I think that matters. I think that definitely matters. So, on the topic of Alton Brown and on the topic of getting your minds changed, I want to talk about food that changed your mind. Something that you used to hate, but you now like, or something that you used to like and you now hate. Because Alton Brown came around on chicken wings, and I came around on goulash. That's my example, goulash. Now, I have a funny goulash story to tell you. When I was young, my family was very, very frugal. And my father used to prepare a dish that he would call goulash. And I, of course, am a small child. I don't really know any better. And what my father's goulash was it was a elbow macaroni tub. It was a tub of elbow macaroni that had been cooked with a can of cream of chicken soup, some salt, some pepper, and some butter. That was what he called goulash. The reason we had it, of course, is because it was extremely cheap to make. Like, really cheap to make. Elbow macaroni and cream of chicken soup and salt and pepper and butter, and you're good, right? Unbelievably cheap. You could feed 5 people really cheaply. I didn't know any better. Well, I kind of got a little tired of goulash because, of course, when you're really frugal, you have the same meals frequently. When I grew up, I was introduced to what goulash actually was. And I had to convince myself that it was not what I thought it was. And so because of that, I was forced to change my mind on goulash. These are the types of things that sometimes can get embedded in your brain. My mother used to make this chipped beef when we were little that I never really enjoyed. I had to relearn chipped beef when I got older as well. But for me, it was goulash. For Angie Lindowski, it was mushrooms. Mr. Diggs says ranch dressing. You know, you're gonna get canceled for that, Mr. Diggs. You're not allowed to like ranch dressing. Patton says Brussels sprouts and broccoli. Love them in honey sriracha now. I have never had Brussels sprouts and honey sriracha, but I do like broccoli. Big, big fan. Richard Rush knows exactly what's up. He says, my mom's goulash was elbow macaroni, onions, and tomatoes. You know exactly what's up, Richard. You know what's up. Moving along. It's draft season, and you know what that means. We're going to pick a draft prospect, and we're going to make a food comparison. That's what we're going to do. Last week, it was Treylon Burks. This week, I'm going to make mine. Now, go ahead in the comment section and make your own draft prospect to food comparison. For me, I'm going to go with Kyle Hamilton because we're trying to stay on the topic of safeties, which has been sort of a discussion around Bills Mafia, around the social media atmosphere over the last day or so. And Kyle Hamilton, for me, is pad thai. I will explain why Kyle Hamilton is pad thai. You know, when I have pad thai or I introduce someone else to pad thai, I always eat it and go, I just don't understand how you couldn't like this. But yet consistently, I'll come across a handful of people who will have their pad thai, and maybe I'll have a bite of theirs. They'll have a bite of mine. I took my wife there. I had a bite. I was like, yeah, this is good. This is a good representation of pad thai. And she goes, I don't really like it. And I'm always so shocked. I'm like, well, what's not to like? I don't understand. How could you not like this? And that's the way I feel about Kyle Hamilton. Just falling. Just nobody really wants him. Every single time there's a mock draft and a team gets their team mocked Kyle Hamilton, they get mad. And I don't understand why. I've watched a ton of his games. I went back over the last week and watched a little bit more. This weekend, I'm going to try and finish up safety, so I'll probably triple down a little bit on Kyle Hamilton film. And every time I walk away going, I don't understand why you couldn't like this player. I don't get it. I do not understand why someone could be introduced to pad thai, have it, and go, yeah, that sucks. And I don't understand how someone could be introduced to Kyle Hamilton for the first time and go, yeah, nah, I'm good. I'm fine. I'll pass on that. And so because of that, for me, Kyle Hamilton is pad thai. I don't know if anybody in the comments section doesn't like pad thai or does like pad thai, but for me, Kyle Hamilton is pad thai. Now, this is very important. Maybe the most important. The most important thing we're going to get to is the comment section. Richard says, you got to cook your bacon on a grill with applewood. It's next level good, because Patton had said a food I used to like that I really don't like anymore is probably bacon. Now, I'm going to go ahead and block you, Patton, but just know that I do it out of love. Know that I do it from the heart. I'm blocking you from the heart because Ron Swanson and I share a lot of commonalities. Ron Swanson, one of the greatest cinematic characters of all time from the TV show Parks and Recreation. And one of them is a love for bacon. I can have I can have bacon every day. Bill's Backers of Kansas City says, pad thai extra spicy is my jam. The day after spicy pad thai, woof. Yeah, we're not talking about that, though. We're just talking about the experience of consuming it. Patton says we had a good run because I'm going to ban him. Yeah, no, I get it. It's all right, man. It's a little bit like Old Yeller. You're crying as you pull the trigger, right? You're crying. You don't want to do it, but, it's time. It's time. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9:32, and I'm going to wrap this bad boy up. That's right. I'm going to wrap it up early. You know why? Because my voice is starting to go. And I wanted to try and make it through tonight before resting my voice. But my voice is starting to go a little bit, and I'm hoping I can recover over the next couple of days. But I can feel it starting to, starting to give out a little bit. Andy Lindowski says, does Bruce just drop a dat dough? Yeah, you're right, I did. You know what's up. Bruce is the king of the slang. Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We're out of here early. Get you the rest of your Friday night back, the rest of your Saturday morning back. I hope you had a good time. We had some laughs. We chilled. It was awesome. And I hope you didn't leave hungry.